are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from the heart of Central Texas. I'm trying to sound a little bit like Alex Jones there. I've been watching a lot of Alex Jones lately. You know, I did not watch Alex and tune into Alex for years. I was early on Alex's train back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and thought Alex was pretty interesting, and I got tuned back in because I was watching a lot of the coverage of the DNC and the RNC. Of course, he was running the three-ring circus at the RNC, being a shit disturber and getting involved in sort of deep agitprop with the help of the police, by the way. You know, I wonder if Alex Jones is a Freemason. I don't know if anybody's ever brought that up. But that is a group that Alex never talks about. Does anybody else ever notice that? Does anybody even really care? I mean, that's a whole other question aside. But he never talks about the Masons. Never. I'd bet money that Alex Jones is a Freemason. I'd bet big money that he was a Freemason. Whatever money I have, it's not big. But whatever money I have down there in Wells Fargo, which is supposedly too big to fail, I'd bet that he's a Freemason. He's a controversial character. He's rising, you know, in popularity. He's hitched himself to the Trump bandwagon in a huge way, believes that Trump is the last hope of freedom in the republic. You know, I don't know if that's necessarily true. You know, again, I'll be upfront with my feelings about Trump. I don't trust him at all. But then again, I don't think his most trusted business associates would trust him either. And he's made what I think is a critical error in naming Mike Pence his vice presidential candidate. You know, Mike Pence is from Indiana. Do you know who else was from Indiana? Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle was from Indiana. And it seems to me like Trump is positioning himself as sort of the second coming of Reagan in some ways, with a little bit of John F. Kennedy thrown in there with that Kennedy timeline and Gemini and 9/11. You know, we've talked about that before. So he's taken Mike Pence on as his running mate, and Pence has already gone into betrayal mode. He's publicly backing Paul Ryan. And, you know, if you're following any of what's happening, Paul Ryan has been not on Donald Trump's side. And let's be clear for a second. Let's remove the name Donald Trump. Okay, let's just wipe that clean, and let's just objectify who and what he is, and theoretically what he stands for. He does not get there without the support of hundreds of millions of people, or millions of people, maybe not hundreds, millions of people. He doesn't get there without it. So it's not really Trump. Trump is just in some ways, he's just a figurehead. He's a symbol. I mean, if we want to go just completely sort of matrix Hindu on this, or Hindu matrix on this, he doesn't even exist, right? He is a projection of a series of collective thoughts that surface simultaneously. How about that? It could be anybody. It could be Elmer Fudd, if enough people got behind Elmer Fudd. It could be you. It could be me. So this is what Trump is. He's symbolic of something. And he is symbolic of people who are sick and tired. And I don't know if Trump will carry the day. I don't even know if he'll win the election. He may not even make it to November. There's a weird story that's trying to be circulating around the internet that some guy was found in Trump Towers with a silencer. Some people say it never happened. Some people say it happened 2 years ago. It's still hanging out there on Jeff Francis' site. Apparently the guy had the name of a deceased FBI agent when they ran his fingerprints. I'd not be surprised if they try to put a hit out on Donald Trump. Certainly they are putting a mass media hit on Trump. I've never seen anything like this before, ever. I have never seen a standing president vociferously and aggressively go after a candidate in another party. Never seen it before. I've never seen a president like Obama tell the rest of the world that Trump is unfit to be president. Now let's just examine this for a moment in time. Let's just get into the world of Barack Hussein Obama. How was Barack Obama fit for anything when he ran for president? I mean, the great thing about Obama was that he was a mystery wrapped in an enigma. That's what he was. Nobody really knew who he was. If you look at his voting record, he voted absent or abstained or 75% of the time. And when he did vote, he voted on things that really were kind of partisan issues. His voting record was not controversial. It did not set him apart. Did he write any groundbreaking legislation? No. In fact, the only legislation he wrote was legislation that supported the city of Chicago and state of Illinois doing a little home cooking. That's it. So there was no real political profile in his brief time in the Senate that anybody had on Barack Obama. If you went back into his personal life, it's shrouded in mystery. Shrouded in mystery. He had 2 books written for him, and I say written for him. So the second book may not have been The Audacity of Hope. That may not have been fully written for him. He might have had something to do with it, which is because there was a distinct difference in the quality of the writing between the 2 books. And The Word in the Street, obviously, is that Bill Ayers wrote the first book, Dreams of My Father. So here he comes. Let's go back in time. It's right around this time, August, September of 2008, where I begin to start my blog. It's right around this time. And you can go back and see my very first post. You can type in Robert Phoenix, Sarah Palin. And my blog was just kind of a collection of personal meanderings and ramblings. Didn't really have a focus, but I was formulating something. And then Sarah Palin becomes John McCain's candidate. And I'm like, well, who is this woman? Where did she come from? What's she about? Let me look at her astrological chart, and I found it. And I began to dissect it. And I got more hits on that one post than anything I'd ever done combined to that point. And all of a sudden, I have a new path in life. So if any of you enjoy my work, either as an astrologer or as a commentator, you can thank Sarah Palin. Because if it wasn't for Sarah Palin, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So something potentially good may have come out of Sarah Palin. So then I did my next post, and it was on astrology in the White House. It was about Nancy Reagan, and it was about Joan Quigley and Ronald Reagan. Because I wanted, because we were talking presidential candidacy and astrology. So I wanted to kind of, hey, look, here's astrology in the White House. And then the third piece I wrote was on Barack Obama. And to this day, I still think it's one of my better pieces because he's emerging. He's really emerging at that time. He's just come out of the race with Hillary, in which he overtook her in the final leg. And really what happened, and I'll tell you what happened. Apparently Bill, or the clone Bill, or whoever the hell that guy is, I don't know, did a deal with the Chinese. And I think he made a few $1 million, but he didn't cut certain people in. And apparently when you do these deals, it's like a mob. You got to cut them in. You got to cut people in. I'll cut you. I'll give you a couple mil here, a couple mil. And you think, oh, it's a couple mil to these people. A couple mil is a lot. Think of all the bribes that you could get with a few $1 million. Think of all the people you can buy off. Think of all the influence. You see, when you get to a certain level of power and money, you need to have more because you want to create a wider circle of influence. And in order to do that, you have to have resources that you can use both legally and illegally. So $1 million here, $1 million there. It's kind of like 20, 30, 40 bucks here and there for you and I, $100 here and there for you and I. So the next thing you know, you got a few extra $100. You can do what? Have a $20 stake that used to be $10 15 years ago. So here's Obama. He catches Clinton. She's punished because Bill did a dirty deal. Then the deals will make you Secretary of State, and then you'll be the next president. Don't worry about it. Just hang in there. Don't worry about it. Probably telling the same thing to Biden. Hey, Joe, we'll make you vice president. You'll be the next president. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They're probably telling Obama the same thing. Barack, yeah, 2 terms. Hey, don't worry about it. We'll get you more. 3, 4, 5. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So you've got all these people not worrying about it. And each one of them might be on pins and needles saying, it could be my time, could be my time, could be my time. Maybe I'll stay longer. So I did a post on Obama, and one of the things that was clear is that he had no past. And that's why he was the perfect candidate. And when we looked deeper into his past, where he went to school, who he went to school with, nobody remembered him. Nobody. I mean, there are some cases where it was at Yale, where he was on the law review. Look, I can't fuck up. Sorry, I shouldn't use the F word so much. Let's do this. Let's see. Let's see here. Harvard. Let's see. Harvard, Yale. I just got to make sure. I got to get my Ivy League bona fides correct with Obama. Columbia, Harvard, not Yale. See, I corrected myself in real time. Isn't that to me, that is taking accountability. Because I don't want to get an email that says, hey, you got that wrong. I mean, that's fine. I get things wrong. I'm human. Anyway, there are a few scant reports of him being on the Harvard Law Review. Nobody remembers him from Columbia. Nobody. But people do remember him from Harvard and the Harvard Law Review. And in fact, there's been some information coming out recently that there were 2 members of the Harvard Law Review and they were males who actually filed sexual harassment suits against Obama and the college. And those suits were settled. And those guys apparently received very large six-figure sums to go away. And apparently there's a third person who also was involved in the filing of the suit. They know who these people are. So there is a record of Obama at Harvard. It's not a great record. He didn't write anything either. Do you see a pattern here? He doesn't really post. He doesn't really make any kinds of inroads with legislation. He's absentee most of the time, or he abstains from voting. So he's opaque. He said he was going to be transparent, but he was really opaque. Now contrast that with Donald Trump. Very different. Very, very different. Now let's go back to Obama for a second. When I wrote that article, that image that I saw of Obama is when he comes out of the water. He's coming out of the beach, right? He's coming out of the ocean, and he's on the beach, and he's muscular, and he's glistening. It's like he's just emerged from our collective unconscious. He's this bright, shining icon. It's Piscean, right? Very Piscean. And what is hope? Hope is a Piscean sentiment. Hope is a Piscean platitude. In hope, without faith, they must be together. You cannot separate the two out. Hope without faith is existential yearning. Faith without hope is a dire need to have a belief in something without any sort of infusion of expansion or love. Faith is a Saturnian commitment in a lot of ways. Solemn. Faith is solemn. You add hope to faith, and you have something very, very powerful. Very powerful. The two need one another in order. It's like an alchemical combination of qualities. Just feel that for a second. See what it feels like. Let's just do this as a live exercise. I'll say the word faith. And what does it feel like? Just internalize it for a second. Faith. A little flat, isn't it? Hope. Hope. A little airy. Maybe not enough gravitas, right? Hope. All right, here we go together. Hope and faith. Hope and faith. Ah, now we're talking hope and faith. Yeah. You see, the two of them together are potent. They're powerful because hope has inside of it the promise of tomorrow. Faith has inside of it the commitment of today. And when you bring the two together, you have a dynamic, powerful combination of a state of consciousness that is invested in the future and rooted in the here and now. And without the other, they are less powerful. And each one is sort of adrift in its own elemental expression. Combined, it is the power to change worlds. If you don't have any hope without faith, and there can be the darkest moments of your life, the darkest hours of your life, and if you have faith and you have a tiny, tiny, tiny mustard seed of hope, then you have the potential of making it through that dark night. But all we got with Obama was hope and change. And we have very little of each now. Oh, we have change, but the change is horrible. Horrible. Now, the cultural Marxist or the communist or the New Age Luciferic occultist social justice warrior will tell you right now that we are in the midst of the change. The change hasn't even happened yet. We're still breaking down the classical structures of government and business and politics and sex relations and identity and all the things that we need to theoretically have in order to have a new paradigm. So, yeah, things have changed, but ultimately they haven't really changed. And that is the irony and the paradox of the whole thing. I mean, look at the world we're living in now and put it up to a snapshot of where we were 8 years ago. Holy Moses. Not even close. And is it better? Is it really better? Has anybody's lives, except for the 0.5%, improved? The answer is an unequivocal no. Has the Black American community gotten better, stronger, more self-sufficient, and solvent over the last 8 years since theoretically one of their own was elected into office? I would say no. I would say there's an absolute no. Maybe perhaps the upper Black middle class has been able to benefit from Obama's position, but I would say by and large, the only thing that, from my position, and again, you know, I'm a 55-year-old white guy living in Austin, Texas. But from what I can see, the only thing that's really changed or affected the Black American community is rage. Rage, outrage, division, separation. And is that an improvement? Is that an improvement in their lives? No. And it took us 8 years to get here. It's like it took him like the last 3 years, really, Trayvon Martin's when the fuse was lit. So I wouldn't consider that better by any stretch. Speaking of the Black American community, Hillary Clinton is talking about reparations. She is hinting that if she becomes president, she will seek reparations. Hinting. Not coming right out saying it, but hinting. Now, this is an interesting sort of Rubicon in our socioeconomic reality. Because let's say, for instance, Hillary Clinton is a woman of her word, which she's not. But let's say she is, and she moves forward and she pushes the reparations button. Okay. So first of all, what is determined as far as the reparation amount? Correct? And who is eligible? This is going to be a really interesting question. Who is eligible? Because right now, we have the science to look at DNA and absolutely determine where your ancestors come from and the genetic makeup of your DNA and blood. So let's say, for instance, I had African American blood, right? They were able to kind of figure this out genetically, 2%, through a DNA test. Now, would I be eligible for reparations? Because there's this whole theory that all it takes is one drop, right? One drop, and you're African American. This is a one of these socially held theories. So at what point, right? And maybe 2% is not African American enough for reparations. So then what is it? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20? At what point are you not Black enough in order to receive reparation money? I'm just thinking out loud here, because these are the questions, these are the dilemmas that are going to face Hillary Clinton should she go down that path. And if she goes down that path, then who's next? Native American community. Hey, we got ripped off. We need some retribution. We need reparations. And of course, that'll be just fine for Elizabeth Warren. She had a nice little paycheck. And then what happens next? Well, let's get into the Mexican American community, the Spanish American community, who had their portions of their land taken from them. Hey, what about us? We used to own this place down here. Come on. Okay, all right, you get your reparations too. Right, so where does it stop? Well, here come the Japanese Americans. We spent those years in the internment camps. You just take it up, and that was terrible, by the way. If you really look into what happened to the Japanese Americans during World War II, it was terrible. I mean, you were just uprooted. You were taken to basically a frickin' farm so you could be slave labor. That's where these people lived. They lived on these farms. And the Japanese, of course, are great farmers, so they were ably employed. There are films, like propaganda films, that the U.S. made for that time, really selling it hard, that Japanese Americans were going to really live in a very nice place. And it's just like a little time out, vacation, hey, little relaxation. And you get to work 10 hours a day while you're doing it, picking fruits and vegetables and growing trees. Do you know who was in charge? Do you know who was in charge of that program? Sam Walton, the guy that started Walmart. He was in charge of that program. Sam Walton was the guy that oversaw the redistribution of Japanese Americans in California and the West Coast. How about that? Maybe they need some compensation for that time they were taken out. Right? See, now who's next? Well, we could bring the Chinese American community in, because let's face it, when they worked on the railroads and they worked in the gold mines and out in California, they worked for basically slave wages. So yeah, let's reparate them, let's give them some money, divest ourselves of any sort of guilt around that. How about the people that lost their farms in the Dust Bowl? Lost everything. That can't do that. We can't reparate them. Do you see where this is going? Because once you open that door, then the special interest groups will just pile on. So now what we would have is we'd have Cloward Piven on steroids. Some of you may know or not know what Cloward Piven is or who they were. They were sociologists, and they figured out that the way to defeat the system, the capitalist system that they so despised, that they decided that they could break its back by over-accentuating the welfare state. Now, Cloward and Piven, Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. And the strategy is for overloading the U.S. public welfare system. And where did they come from? They came from Columbia, the Columbia School of Social Work, which is where our dear president also theoretically attended. What is that movie, 6 Degrees of Separation? I can't help but not watch that movie. And I know that character was based on another guy who claimed he was Sidney Poitier's son. And I cannot help but think about that movie. And I can't help but not think about Will Smith's character as being related to Barack Obama. Like, he's a cipher of Obama in many ways. And one of the things that is a big talking point in that movie is Catcher in the Rye, and the whole notion of being a fraud and a phony, which is really part of the American landscape. This is the country and the culture where we fake it till we make it. So there's everybody at some point has to deal with the nature of personality projection, ego identification, and even fraud, right? If you're not a conscious being, then it doesn't really come across your screen. But if you are a conscious being, then you think about, well, am I being true here? Am I being real? Or am I being disingenuous? And being disingenuous, am I being a fraud? And as somebody who comes in contact with the public via this microphone, or whenever I make a public appearance, or even when I'm doing a reading for a person, I've got to have that diagnostic every now and then. Of course, I'm a Virgo, it's part of the game. It's like, okay, how real am I? How real am I? How real am I in my life? How real am I in my relations with other people? How real am I with my conscience? And this is what people, it's called looking in the mirror. And what's happened with a lot of people who are in very powerful positions is that not only do they not look in the mirror, in many cases they have mirrors removed from their house. And there's a reason for that. Number one, they can't look themselves in the mirror. Number two, the reason why is because in many cases they'll see demons in the mirror. They'll look at themselves in the mirror and they'll see demons. They're all over the place. So they have the mirrors removed. Mirror, mirror on the wall, right? Mirror doesn't lie. Does not lie. We live in strange times. Really strange times. Reparations would be Cloward Piven on steroids. I'm just calling it like I see it. There's a website now called Reparations. It's a very interesting website, started by African-American woman of Caribbean descent, Creole descent. And she decided to start a website for people that are white and have guilt and want to help somebody from the African-American community financially. It's like, wow. Well, look, I admire the creativity on some level in the chutzpah. Okay, go for it, see what happens. But this is all a social experiment anyway, to some extent, right? So why not? Let somebody create that. See if it works. Let's see if it brings us closer together. From what I understand, she's actually experienced a great deal of antipathy, outrage, and a fair amount of bitterness and hate. But hey, look, it's America. You put it out there, and you gotta take what comes at you. And in our time, this time, not for the faint, not for the weak. You're living here and now. You are on the front lines. You are on the front lines of a world that is fractured and a world that is in the process of major transformation. We have never seen the likes of where we are now. And it is difficult for us to understand that because of how close we are to the event horizon. That's why these times are freaking mind-blowing. It's like the 60s on steroids without the peace and love. This is what we're getting. We're getting the radical backlash of the 60s without the peace and love. Because we had peace and love back then. Hey, brother. Hey, sister. Right on, man. Right on. Power to the people, man. Power to the people. Yeah. Pass the duchy. We didn't call it duchy then, though. Hey, man, pass the grass, brother. Yeah, peace, love. That was the 60s. You had a handful of really angry fucks. Sorry, I'm not supposed to say that word too much. Really angry people in the 60s. They were like a balled up fist, and they were all living in Chicago, Detroit, New York, Berkeley. It was the balled up fist network. Oh, that was a peace and love. But what we have now is we got more angry people now and not enough peace and love. I mean, think about that. Where did that go? Where did all that go? Where did the goodwill go? Where did the harmony, the sense that we were all in this together, where did that go? It got obliterated. It got obliterated, and it got balkanized into special interest groups. And now everybody is just looking after themselves, looking after their special interest group, and middle finger to anyone else, unless, of course, that other special interest group can actually help you, in which case you bring the middle finger back into your hand, if albeit for only a brief period of time, until you have to turn and flip that middle finger to the other special interest group, especially if they're going to come in and take a slice of your pie of the special interest group. This is where we are now. And I have never seen what's happening before with Donald Trump. This is where we're going to talk about the tower, which is what I alluded to in the opening statement or the title of the show. I have never seen a candidate, again, let's objectify him, right? He's a symbol. He's an image. He's a matrix projected image, elevated and propped up by a collective need for whatever it is he stands for. Freedom of speech, freedom of thoughts, safety, security, whatever. He got there on the backs of other people and their energy, and of course, the uplift from the mainstream media, even though most of the time the coverage was incredibly negative. The people make a really good point about the difference between Donald Trump and Ron Paul, and that Ron Paul got no coverage. Ron Paul was marginalized. Trump is not marginalized. Trump has gotten coverage. It has not been coverage that has been in any way, shape, or form flattering or even respectful. And some people say, well, he brought it upon himself. He's uncouth, he's this, he's that. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with some of that. But on the other hand, it's incredibly weighted. And now they're coming out with things like, oh, he's going to pull out. He's offered $150 million to get out of the race, on and on and on and on and on. He's having a nervous breakdown. His family hates him. Those are all ad hominem attacks coming from both sides. Now, if Donald Trump is for real, and he hasn't been drugged, and he hasn't cloned, and he hasn't been taken out of the game, if he's for real, then what he's experiencing now is the equivalent of the Tower of Babel and the mortaring and the pillaring of the Tower of Babel, and that the tower may not be able to withstand the assault upon it. Of course, the Tower of Babel, being an extension of Nimrod, is an example of the fall. In the major arcana, it is the Tower card. By the way, if you ever want to watch a cinematic meditation on a tarot card, the movie I would recommend is The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. It's all about the tower. It's all about the fall of the ego. It's all about the collapse of the individual identity. And there is a level of conspiracy inside the movie. And if you go to a deeper level, there is a level of complicit conspiracy inside the movie. Why? Because Michael Douglas gives his consent for his world to be shattered, shaken, shattered, and fallen apart. He's given his consent. That's a key part of the movie. And he gives his consent over to a corporation who specializes in the decimation of a personal life. So there are layers within layers within layers. And I love The Game because there's no CGI in it. You know, I have come to have nothing but contempt for modern cinema. Number one, they're not making movies for somebody my age. And that's okay. I get it. You know, I'm not going to be interested in Miles Teller and Jonah Hill being arms-dealing bros. I don't have any interest in it. But that's not where the demographic is. So for me, I find most cinema really uninteresting, at least now. But the game is great, and it's a meditation on the tower, and I highly recommend you watching it. By the way, let me put in another movie right now, since we're on the subject and topic of movies, and how it relates to not just our time, but where we're headed, is a movie called Children of Men with Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, Michael Caine, what's that guy's name? Ejiofor, the really great British actor. Highly recommend the game. And Children of Men. Children of Men is a projection of where we're going. And one of the things that is a real problem in the future society that Children of Men is portraying is terrorism and refugees. Yep. This movie was made close to, 6-7 years ago? And it is completely nailing the problems that we are now facing. And the problems we're facing are significant. If you go to Europe, if you go to a place like Sweden, you go to Paris, France, it's going to start to happen in England. There are what they're called UN no-go zones. Think about that. UN no-go zones. And what they are is they're communities in almost sovereign countries inside of parent countries. And the no-go zones are so bad that the police don't even go there. In many cases, even social services like ambulance or EMTs are afraid to go into the no-go zones. This is based on the favela. And the favela, of course, is in Brazil. Favelas are these communities, these encampments, on the hills, on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, and they're basically ghetto encampments. And inside the favelas, there are gangs, and the gangs run the favelas, and the police only go in there if they have to. The gangs run everything. They've got their own system of law. You name it, they run it all. If you want to see another movie about this, City of God. Amazing movie. So the favela has become this model of the no-go zone where there are, and this is really related to Islam and the Wahhabist Salafist version of Islam, the quote-unquote radicalized, although you really we're going to get to a point now where people are not even going to be able to say radicalized anymore. It's headed in that direction, especially in Europe. Anyway, these no-go zones are people. If you are in Sweden, and that town used to be part of kind of your experience, if you go into that town, you are taking your life is at risk. Anything could happen to you there, and there are no police there to protect you. They won't go in there. And these zones are now being sanctioned by the UN. The UN is one of the most dangerous entities we have right now. The UN is involved in legal human trafficking. We talk about human trafficking in the illegal sense. The UN is nothing more than a sponsored entity for human trafficking, moving hordes of people from one place to another and then essentially dropping them off. And if you go onto the good old internet, you'll see that the people who are in places like England or Germany or Sweden Holland, Finland. But a lot of these people are in these relocation centers and they are angry. First of all, you may have warring factions inside those relocation centers. And then they're not getting the quote-unquote social services they need, so they become demanding. And what they're doing is they're breeding antipathy. So when they finally let them out of these relocation centers, they'll be pissed off. Be like hornets. This is the state of the world we're living in. Anyway, Children of Men really gets into this and gets into the whole refugee issue. They call them Fugees or Fugees, short for refugee. And there's a big problem in Europe in the movie, and there's a big problem with terrorism in the movie. It's the world. It's the end of the world, pretty much. It's one of those dark, dystopic, apocalyptic films, but it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it's another meditation. It's a meditation on the Piscean age and the end of the Piscean age. So we're living in very strange times. Trump's getting pilloried. It's Hillary with a P. Pilloried. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. You know, he's a Leo rising, 28 degrees Leo rising, which means the sun right now is in his 12th house. This is the weakest position for Trump right now. He's at a point in time where really he should be laying low. He should be laying low until the 23rd of August. And at that point in time, we've got Antares, Saturn, Mars, all conjunct in Sagittarius. And that, by the way, is down in his 4th house, where he has his moon, where he has his south node. I still think he may not make it to the election time. My video, Trump assassination, has had 10,000 views on YouTube. Pretty good, 10,000 views. I don't read the comments. But my timing around what I was talking about with the assassination actually was pretty much spot on when that guy went up to the, where was it, in Las Vegas or New Mexico, and he stole the gun from the police officer and he was going to kill Trump. And then, again, recently, apparently, there was a guy running around Trump Tower. Trump Tower, the game. Sun in the 12th house. So on the 23rd, the sun emerges and Trump will have a much more vital and viable force. But between now and the 23rd, things can go horribly wrong with him and horribly wrong with the election cycle for him. He also has Pluto in the 12th house. Let's just dial up his chart for a second. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Well, he has some amazing aspects with Jupiter coming up. Right now, he's got Jupiter square Sun, of course, Jupiter in Virgo. Then he's got this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Astrological calls it a sense of compassion. Jupiter conjunct Jupiter, end of November until mid-August. Wonderful opportunities. That's happening during the election cycle. That's right around. I mean, it's a little late, but this is where he's getting into his exactitude. That's actually a really good aspect. And then Jupiter trine Uranus, beginning of December. It's mid-August. And then Jupiter trine Sun. He's got all these Jupiter trines going on. It's actually a sign of, fairly successful transits. Let's go into the natal chart. And I want to look at that Sun-Pluto conjunction. So Pluto's at 10. He's gone through the worst of it. That would have been right around Right around this time when Khan made his appearance at the DNC and Trump stepped in that's the Sun-Pluto conjunction in the 12th house and being exposed. That interaction, which was a trap, by the way, exposed Trump a little bit. You know, and he's been off his game since then. Sun is still going to go through the 12th house. He's got that 29 degree Leo ascendant, not 28, 29. So on the 21st of August, so we're talking 16 days from now, the Sun emerges. The Sun-Mars conjunction. Boy, wait till that happens. And then wait till, you know, Mars gets up around 25 degrees Sagittarius, you know, late August. And he's got that Mars trine, Sun conjunct Mars, first house. They better take him out now. That's all I can say. Looking at all these Jupiter transits, looking at the Sun conjunct Mars, Sun coming onto the ascendant, Mars trine Mars, they better take him out now. Because if they don't take him out now, he's going to be formidable. This guy's going to get a second wind, and he will absolutely shred Hillary. He'll shred his detractors. So this is why they've got a full court press on him. But it's also ego. He's having to deal with the ego too. You know, if you're going to run for president, and I don't look, there are people that say that Trump is just running this thing so that Hillary can get elected. That he would be the most obviously worst candidate. In the meantime, they could get the masses all stirred up, get all kinds of information on people. You know, the sign of the majority comes out, right? People hiding in their caves, in their bunkers, come out, and they make a stand. They say something. They go online. They make a comment. They register Republican, vote for Trump in a primary. Here's the psychological profiling. There's an opportunity to psychologically profile millions of more people that have been dormant. Perhaps that's part of it. And then when it's all said and done, Donald Trump could be a wicker man, set ablaze. The castration of the white American male who theoretically stands up for America that exists in our memory, in our rich imagination. The public sacrifice and the humiliation of the white American male. Perhaps this is what Donald Trump's role is, ultimately, which is why they didn't throw up any kind of namby-pamby, mealy-mouthed candidate like, say, Mike Huckabee. I think Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal. Hillary would stomp Bobby Jindal. She'd stomp him. There wouldn't be any issue, but Bobby Jindal is not a white American male. He doesn't have the same symbolic import. With the exception of maybe Jeb Bush, and only because the Bushes have power and influence, legacy, and would basically be running Bush against Bush because the Clintons are tied into Bush. And by the way, Hillary Clinton will be the second coming of George Bush. All the neocons have jumped back over to her side of the fence, and they will be filling up her administration. And boy, do those guys love war. Never met a war they didn't like. Of course, they never had to fight in a war either. I think Jeb might have been able to beat Hillary, only because of the power and the influence of the Bush family. But just about anybody else, Hillary would have creamed them. Would have absolutely creamed them. And so here we have Trump. And we have all the antipathy, all the rage, all the outrage. Is it real? Is it simply just a dog and pony show pantomime to get everybody worked up and distracted. And if they're getting distracted, what are they getting distracted for? That's the question, isn't it? Tell you what, I'm going to play a little spot from our new sponsor and then play some music so that everybody can go out and have a little break here, a little break in the action, have a cigarette, coffee, whatever it is. So why don't we do this now? Let me play a little clip from our new sponsor, and I'll play some music, and we'll be back right after that. Hold on 1 second. I gotta refresh my screen here so I can actually access the music. That would be important. Because now that I'm putting the shows on YouTube, and you can get these shows, almost minutes before they're done up on YouTube now. So I'm thrilled about that. And I don't want YouTube to hit me with these copyright infringement pieces. So I'm going legit. I'm going straight. You're listening to Friday FARcast, and now a word from our sponsor. That was My German Friends by yours truly. And before that, I'd like to thank the Bendix Corporation, making the world a better, safer place for a future tomorrow. The future tomorrow, boys and girls, is going to look a lot more strange than we can begin to perceive or imagine it. And what's going on with the dog and pony show of this electoral process, as we uncover the graft and the corruption, the slime and the greed, the absolute abuse of power and parliamentary rules of law and engagement. And all you have to do to figure that out is go watch the video of the Nevada Democratic Caucus. And you watch that video, it's up on YouTube. You go to my Facebook page, I have it on my Facebook page. You go and watch that video. It's about 12 minutes of just X-ray vision as to what went on in Nevada when it came down to the superdelegates, the Bernie Sanders people, and the Democratic caucus, the people that were essentially running that convention. First of all, Bernie had more votes than Hillary. They wanted a recount. To get to a recount, they had to be able to change the rules of engagement, Robert's rules. This is what they were pushing for. And essentially, when you get into that environment, there aren't actually, rules that you follow, procedures, protocol. And so the Bernie people who were vociferous, they wanted Robert's rules because they wanted a transparent dialogue which would lead to a recount. And the people that were running that knew what was going on. And they did a yay and they did a nay, and it was clear that the nays drowned out the yays. It was a cacophony of dissent. And what did their esteemed leaders do? Just put that middle finger right up. Said, screw you. We can't change the rules. The yays have it. We're moving on. You watch that video and you'll get a sense as to where we are. There are no more rules. Except, of course, if you break them. In which case, the penalties for the rules are going to get heavier. But for the people that are making the rules, no, there's no more rules. There are no more checks and balances. Where Hillary would be in prison. Maybe Trump would be in prison too. I don't know. But those rules are gone. Obliterated. And so here we are. We're trying to cycle through this stuff. We're trying to get through it. The voices of dissent are growing louder, by the way. The worst thing in some ways that they could have done was put Bernie Sanders out there as a stalking horse for Hillary Clinton. It was the worst thing they could have done. Because what happened was they switched on an electorate. And they thought that they could just move that electorate over to Hillary's side. And because they were good, obedient little Democratic progressives, it would work. That they knew that the outsider that the outsider vote was going to make a difference in this election. What they didn't understand was that those outsiders were not easily bought or co-opted and could see through everything. And now they have a pissed off element in their midst. And it doesn't really matter to some extent because they're going to throw the election anyway. And this is what Trump is talking about. Sun in the 12th house, he's taking a Piscean kind of, unfortunately, people say, sore loser, sore loser. He's getting ready to lose. He's making things up. Excuses. What a strong man. But he has to do it. He has to bring it out in the open. That's what they're going to do. I've said this before. If nobody voted, there'd be an election with 53% of the vote in. Hillary Clinton has a 5% lead over Donald Trump. Everybody's going around, do you vote no? Do you vote no? Do you vote no? I didn't vote. Do you vote no? I didn't vote. In a record number of votes tallied. I mean, they can make anything up now. They're turning terrorist names from Islamic names into Western names. Anything goes. A man's a woman's a man. Anything goes. Unless, of course, you want to be somewhat normal, somewhat stable, somewhat functional. Something with continuity, consistency, coherence. Those things, not allowed. Not allowed. So what is really going on? What is really happening behind the scenes as we hurtle at light speed towards the conclusion of the event horizon, which we're upon right now? Let me read something to you here. There are a couple things that are going on behind the scenes. And one of them is it gives you a sense and an idea as to how the world works at a dark, dingy, dangerous, deadly level, all for profit, blood, chaos, and the chance to stay on top. This is from Soren Dreyer's website. And it is Europe is getting rich by fueling its own terror epidemic. This gives you one example as to what's going on behind the scenes right now, and I'll tell you what they're covering up and what's coming. Let me read this to you. Though Europeans do not have the rates of gun violence the United States continues to grapple with, European governments have made over €1 billion by fueling gun violence in the Middle East and North Africa. That is true. I'm going to give you another movie to watch. This is movie day today. Darwin's Nightmare. You've got to watch Darwin's Nightmare. It gives you a bird's eye view of NGOs, European colonization, and, of course, death, destruction of the environment, children, families, countries, nation states. The most compelling image from this movie, which is all about the Nile perch and the devastating effect it has when it's introduced into a lake in Africa where it is not indigenous, are images of these Russian transport planes. These planes have huge cargo vaults, right? These Russian planes fly in, and what are they bringing? Guns, lots of them. And what are they flying out? They're flying out the frozen, fatted Nile perch to restaurants and stores across Western Europe. In come the guns, out goes the fish. Watch the movie. Darwin's Nightmare. A report conducted by a team of reporters from the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, the BRN, not to be confused with BERN, BURN, And the Organized Crime Corruption Reporting Project, also known as the OCCRP, found a group of European nations has been funneling arms into the Middle East region since 2012. Back that up about 10 years, making at least 1.2 billion euros in the process. According to the report, 68 flights that took place within 13 months transported weapons of ammunition to the Middle East, including to NATO member Turkey, which in turn funneled arms into brutal civil wars in Syria and Yemen. The report also notes that these flights make up only a small portion of the 1.2 billion euros of arms deals between Europe and the Middle East since 2012. It's taken place before 2012. Trust me on this. The report's conclusions are horrifying to say the least. The report states, arms export licenses, which are supposed to guarantee the final destination of the goods, have been granted despite ample evidence that weapons are being diverted to Syrian and other armed groups accused of widespread human rights abuses and atrocities. They don't care. They just want their money. They want social disruption, social disorder, social chaos, because when chaos is in play, anything can happen, and you just move people around, which is what's happening. Surely the best way to counter terrorism is to cease funding it in the first place. Hello? One astounding aspect of the report is that the lucrative war profiteering business involves nations the world would not usually regard as overly interested in war. Countries contributing to the rising terror threat, as identified by the report, are Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Romania, among others. This report adds to the already glaring problem of European countries making billions of death and destruction of Middle Eastern civilian life. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, also known as the SIPRI, found the United Kingdom was second only to the United States in arms sales, making up 10.4% of the total $401 billion worth of arms sold around the world for the 2014 period. Yes, boys and girls, war is big business. Even if it's not a big war, even if it's a civil war, and you keep both sides armed, sometimes you arm one side a little more than the other, but at some point somebody's going to win. There's going to be countless kids, women slaughtered, raped. Whoever the winner is, boy, guess who they do? Or guess what they do? They're beholden to the guy or the woman who sold them the arms. Now you've got a little puppet dictator, get to hang around for a little while until you get pissed off at him, like they did with Gaddafi, and then you just stage another intervention, another revolution, another war. Yeah, right, democracy. Democracy's dead. Democracy died with John F. Kennedy. No such thing as democracy. So that's what's going on. The election doesn't even tackle any of this. No, they don't, because these people, especially Hillary Clinton, they're up to their eyeballs in this stuff. But there's something else going on, something even darker, something that when I read this to you you're going to flip out. This is where it's all headed, boys. Nobody's talking about it. This and AI. Nobody's talking about AI. AI is the elephant in the room. This is from Silver Doctors, Gold, Silver, and Finance News. It's a little independent blog here. The story is about the U.S. government, which is lifting a ban on part human, part animal embryos. I'm not kidding. I'm going to read this to you. This is from an NPR, National Public Radio, which is the socialist radio arm of the United States, started by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who created the Great Society and the socialist capitalist empire that we know now. It's coming to fruition. The federal government announced plans on Thursday to lift a moratorium on funding of controversial experiments that use human stem cells to create animal embryos that are partly human. Let me read that to you again. The federal government announced plans Thursday to lift a moratorium on funding of controversial experiments that use human stem cells to create animal embryos that are partly human. The National Institute of Health is proposing a new policy to permit scientists to get federal money to make embryos known as chimeras under certain carefully monitored conditions. Of course, they're always carefully monitored, aren't they? The NIH imposed a moratorium on funding these experiments in September because they could raise ethical concerns. You think? One issue is that scientists might inadvertently create animals that have partly human brains, endowing them with some semblance of human consciousness or human thinking abilities. Another is that they could develop into animals with human sperm and eggs and breed, producing human embryos or fetuses inside of animals or hybrid creatures. This is Atlantis all over again. We are living, this is the reincarnation of Atlantis. This is it. You know, we get all those stories from the mists of time, right? The legends, the archetypes, the fairy tales, the griffins, the chimeras, the animals that are combinations of one animal and another. Where do you think those came from? What if Hanuman wasn't just a very imaginative sort of deity? What if Hanuman was real? What if Hanuman was part monkey and was part man and had a brilliant and vicious social intelligence? What if Ganesh was really part human? Think about that. Perhaps these really fantastic tales of gods that were miscegenations between humans and animals and whatever other form they could throw in there, that they were actually real. And here we are in the reincarnation of that cycle, because that is where we're headed. And of course, science, infallible science. But scientists have argued that they could take steps to prevent those outcomes, and that those embryos provide invaluable tools for medical research. For example, scientists hope to use the embryos to create animal models of human diseases, which could lead to new ways to prevent and treat illnesses. Researchers also hope to produce sheep, pigs, cows with human hearts, kidneys, livers, and possibly other organs that can be used for transplants. How about that? How's it like to be a poor cow? Cows have it rough already anyway, right? And now they're going to grow human hearts inside of cows. You kill the cow, you take the heart out. Thanks, cow. Got to get that now. Somebody needs this. I mean, maybe people should just die. Maybe disease isn't a bad thing. I mean, you know, it helps keep the numbers down. Do these people really want to extend the human lifespan to the point where the planet is just populated, overpopulated, and that this is their way to, feel good about it? It's ridiculous. There's no altruism here. You get into the side, and what kind of ethics really are safeguarding science? I can tell you it's not religion, because very few scientists are religious. No, they want to play God. They want to be God. They don't want to, stand in deference to God. Not at all. Not at all. So what's going to stop them from, I think we really should do this. I really, really think we should cross an ape with a human, so that we can, at that point, begin to understand what the intermediary species might have been like. So now they've never been able to find the intermediary species, which is one of the huge problems with Darwinism. biological Darwinism. Intermediary species. None. Zero, zilch, nada. Let's create one. Let's create one. Here we have the combination of the man and a monkey, an ape, the man ape. And what do we have? We have Planet of the Apes. I know it sounds far-fetched. It's not. It is not. Yeah, why don't we try to do that? Because we really need to understand what this form of human would have been like. And then they can make and draw all their conclusions and have their scientific and rational justifications. Oh, yeah, here it is. The old ape man. And, of course, like Planet of the Apes, they turn against us and burn the planet down. Right? Oh, boy. We are in trouble. In addition, the NIH would even consider experiments that could create animals with human sperm and human eggs, since they may be useful for studying human development and infertility. But in that case, steps would have to be taken to prevent the animals from breeding. Right. All it takes is one guy stroking his little beard, his little white beard. I wonder what it'd be like if they actually made it. Come on, let's watch it. We'll control this thing. It won't get out of hand. Nobody will know. Look at them. They're hot for each other already. Look at that. Let's just get them together. Oh, God. Several scientists say they're thrilled by the new policy. Of course they are. It's very, very welcome news that NIH will consider funding for this type of research, says Pablo Ross, a developmental biologist at the University of California, Davis, which is where they made the first GMO vegetable, the tomato, UC Davis. First genetically modified tomato. Crossed it with a fish gene. Trying to grow human organs in farm animals, we need funding. Funding to be able to answer some very important questions. Can't they just do this on computers now? Can't they just scale it out and do it on computers and, create values so that on a computer they can actually, do it without actually doing it? But critics denounce the decision. Science fiction writers might have imagined worlds like this, like the island of Dr. Moreau, Brave New World, Frankenstein, says Stuart Newman. Newman. A biologist at New York Medical College. They've been speculations, but now they're becoming more real. And I think we just can't say that since it's possible, then let's do it. The public has 30 days to comment on the proposed policy. NIH could start funding projects as early as 2017. Tell you what, if you don't want that, send letters to the NIH. Hopefully they'll do something. This is what's going on behind the scenes. While all the Sturm und Drang of the election and where we're all headed, which on some level is vital because, we are at a nexus point with that. This is what's going on underneath everything. We've got European countries sending rifles, artillery, munitions into Africa so that these wars can continue, so there's more death and violence and destruction, so they can move them out of there and bring them back to Europe where they're battle-scarred, confused, traumatized, pissed off, radicalized, and hate the countries that created the conditions for the war themselves. How about that? That's a great idea. Let's just sign off on that. In Islam, in the Wahhabist and Salafist version of Islam, the white man is the devil. Nation of Islam, white man is the devil. Blackmore science, white man is the devil. And when I see shit like that, I can understand why they would think that, by the way. And I am not a hater. You know, I was born in this body, this skin tone. Hey, you know, gotta love yourself. I don't care what nationality, creed, or skin you've got. You gotta love yourself. So here I am, 55-year-old white guy. I'm loving myself. But at the same time, those assholes are the ones that are responsible for creating the violence and the death and destruction. I have no patience for the quote-unquote white male who has sold us all out at a high level, the Warren Buffetts of the world. You feel me? The Bill Gates of the world, the sellouts. And those are just a few of the headliners. There's more. Got 30 days. You want to put a little heat on the NIH. And I haven't even got into the robotics part. The robotics piece is off the charts. The AI piece is off the charts. By the way, if you ever need a really good laugh, go find Bill Burr's podcast. Bill, B-I-L-L, Burr, B-U-R-R. He does a daily podcast, I think. I know he comes up with one on Monday and Thursday. He's hilarious. He's got he's got a podcast, Pokemon Go, and what else? Robots. You got to watch. You got to listen to it. It's hilarious. And he makes an amazing point. You know, you've got these different robotics companies, and they're trying to keep up with each other and make their robot even better. And at some point, the robot is going to enter into the marketplace, and it is going to change everything. And humans are going to be obsolete. Now, what's happening on the human side is that humans are becoming more like robots. Here's a story which is interesting. And there is some humanistic kind of elements involved here. It's from Nature, the International Weekly Journal of Science. And the story is, welcome to the Cyborg Olympics. The Cybathlon aims to help disabled people navigate the most difficult course of all, the everyday world. This is actually a really interesting article. And it gets into people that have significant disabilities and the potential for robotics to enable them to regain their mobility and their kind of vertical stature in day-to-day life. I'm going to read you just a little bit of this. It's a very long article. It goes into quite a bit of detail here. It says, Vance Bergeron was once an amateur cyclist who rode 7,000 kilometers per year, much of it on the steep climbs in the Alps. But in February 2013, as the 50-year-old chemical engineer was biking to work at the École Normale Supérieure in Lyons, France, he was hit by a car. The impact sent him flying through the air onto his head, breaking his neck. When he woke up, he learned that he would never again move his legs on his own and would only have limited use of his arms. Confined to bed for months while his body did what healing it could, Bergeron began to look for a way back to cycling. He started to study neuroscience with an emphasis on research into robotic prosthesis that could turn people like him into cyborgs, combinations of human and machine. He learned that some of these prostheses used a technique known as functional electrical stimulation, also known as FES, to deliver electrical signals to atrophied limbs or the stumps of missing ones, causing the muscles to contract and restoring some function. As soon as Bergeron had recovered enough to use a wheelchair, he took that idea back to the lab, where he switched his research focus to neuroscience. Using himself as a guinea pig, he and his team worked out how to stimulate the nerves in his legs so that his muscles would flex and pedal a bike. I had become my own research project, and it's a win-win. He says, that's great. I am not dissing Vance Bergeron's experiment on himself so that he can ride a bike again. I've got no issue with that at all. Even with regular exercise sessions to build muscle, Bergeron's artificially stimulated legs have produced at most 20 watts of power, barely 1/10 of the 150 to 200 watts produced by an average cyclist. But he and his team are building the FES controller, and electrodes into a carbon fiber recumbent tricycle that he hopes will help him do better, and perhaps win a medal on 8 October when he takes his machine to Zurich, Switzerland to race against other FES cyclists in the Cybathlon, the first Cyborg Olympics. Mark that date, October 8th, the Cybathlon, the first Cyborg Olympics. Around the world, nearly 80 research groups in 25 countries are honing their technologies for the $5 million US, $5.5 million events. They range from small ad hoc teams to the world's largest manufacturers of advanced prosthesis and comprise about 300 scientists, engineers, support staff, and competitors. Disabled people who will each compete in one of 6 events that will challenge their ability to tackle the chores of daily life. A race for prosthetic arm users will be won by the first cyborg to complete tasks including preparing a meal and hanging clothes on a line. A powered wheelchair race will test how well participants can navigate everyday obstacles such as bumps and stairs. So this is Olympics that are going to be very unlike any other Olympics. If you could make a meal with a robot arm, how fast you can do it, I guess how good the meal tastes, you'll be judged accordingly. Could you imagine the poor bastard who takes like 20 minutes, the arm malfunctions, the meal comes out like crap? Boy, you don't want to be that guy. Everybody's, he'll get a medal though. He'll get a medal, right? And for the most heroic attempt at creating a souffle, it's given to... Oh, man. So the robots are going to become more human, and the humans are going to become more robotic. Now, what they talk about here, which is kind of in the sidebar section, and they've got stuff like these people are going to be wearing these neural headpieces and moving things around with their minds. How about that? That's another thing that they're going to get into. They've got the prosthetic leg race. So if you've got prosthetic legs, you get to race somebody. Now, what they are also talking about, it's a very, very long article. I highly recommend it. I can't read the whole thing. It'd take me up to the end of the show. But I recommend it, nature.com. Nature.com. What they're also talking about here are the military applications of the cyborg human interface. Before I get into that, I'm just going to read this little paragraph here. The Cybathlon will be back in 2020, so 4 years from now, as a 7-day event in Tokyo coinciding with the Olympics. It will have new events for competitors with visual impairments and will conduct some races outside the stadium. But for competitors in the first Cybathlon, being at the cutting edge is already a thrill. This is Iron Man. This is Avatar, says Bergeron. A combination of BCI and exoskeletons all over the place. Now, the military has its eyes on the prize with this one. All right? This is another story here, a little sidebar. I'm going to just kind of get into this one a little bit. The Pentagon's gamble on brain implants, bionic limbs, and combat exoskeletons. When Jeffrey Lang talks about the future of technology, his ideas go flying around the room like a whirlwind. Lang eagerly describes a world in which people live far beyond their natural lifespans. Minds can be downloaded into the external hard drives for enhancement by artificial intelligence, and robot and aircraft are controlled by human thought. It's also abso-posi-freaking-lutely going to happen, he declares. The next 20 years are going to make our heads spin because we've already crossed over into that realm. Lang should know. He's doing as much as anyone to make these visions real. A neurologist by training, he is also a U.S. Army colonel and director of the first biology funding office to operate within the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, also known as DARPA, the Pentagon's avant-garde research arm. The Biological Technologies Office, the BTO, which opened in April 2014, of course it's April Aries, correct, aims to support extremely ambitious, some say fantastical technologies ranging from powered exoskeletons for soldiers to brain implants that can control mental disorders. DARPA's plan for tackling such projects being carried out in the same frenetic style that has defined the agency's research in other fields. Ever since it was created in 1958, a year after the Soviet Union beat the United States into space by launching the world's first artificial satellite, Sputnik, the agency's mission has been to prevent any more such surprises by getting there first. So DARPA's program managers at the BTO are free to pour tens of millions of dollars into ambitious projects without waiting around for niceties such as peer review, and by working closely with its contractors as they develop their technology. The agency aims to drive discoveries across the often deadly gap between research and commercialization. That aggressive high-risk strategy has had spectacular payoffs, and most famously with the agency's development of the internet in the 1970s, and that has happened often enough to inspire imitators such as ARPA-E, a branch of the U.S. Department of Energy that has developed a high-risk research into alternative energy sources. But some wonder whether DARPA's full-speed ahead model will work as well for biology as it has for the physical sciences and hardware. Living systems are much more complex, they argue, with a multitude of variables that are either unknown or difficult to engineer and control. So here we go. The DoD is working on creating the cyborg super soldier. So we're into RoboCop territory. And these guys are horny. They are horny to create this stuff because they want to play God. They want to recreate the physical world. Now, think of what if you had a chimera who was now moved into the cyborg program, and you had a super soldier cyborg chimera. Holy shit. Now we're getting creative. Hey, I am taking this to another level. I should get funding for this. I want to see the Planet of the Apes chimera into a super soldier cyborg program to create the ultimate fighting machine. God, the possibilities are endless. I can have my own army of super soldier simian cyborg warriors to do my bidding. If you have enough money, maybe you could. This, boys and girls, is where the world is going. It's where the world is going. Robots becoming humans, humans becoming robots, animals becoming human, humans becoming animals, men becoming women, women becoming men. In the meantime, we're bickering. This group's bickering about this group's bickering about that. I hate you, I want mine. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Boys and girls, let's just take a time out. Let's just take a breath. Let's look at what's really going on here. Because in 20 years, our world's going to be unrecognizable. And most of you are going to be fossils and artifacts. Once the cat is let out of the bag, it cannot be put back in. Once we move into Chimera land, so that maybe they'll have like an amusement park. Chimera land. I mean, isn't that what Disney is already? Kind of, right? You got a little mouse that can talk. You got a dog that can talk. Chimera land. Disney is Chimera land. But let's just say Disney creates a little subpark called Chimero. And you go there and you get to meet all these hybrids. You know, of course they're not real. Yeah. But they're getting your children used to it. Right? And they have a nice little robot guide. Welcome to Chimera. My name is Zoltron. Or
Zoltran, I can be gender neutral depending upon your preference in viewing and interacting with me.
Oh my God. We got to wake up because this is the world that's coming. Let's just, can we just take a breath and hold hands together for a moment in time and just reflect upon where all this is going? We're getting ready to go right off that edge, right off that Atlantean rift into the darkness, into the void. But who knows? Maybe after all the smoke clears, you've got a chimera fighting on your side. In the Great War, in the Great Freedom War, the chimeras will be the heroes of our time, taking on the android cyborg forces. What a trip. Alex Jones, I have, like I said, I've been watching Alex Jones lately. And I think Alex Jones listens to my show. Now, maybe I'm being a little egotistical. I don't know, but he talks about things that I talk about and uses language that I use. And, I did this thing a few weeks ago where we got into intention, the power of intention, which we might do today. And I guess it was about a week ago, or maybe even this last week, Alex Jones is doing on-air prayer for Donald Trump, breaking that fifth wall. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre. I'll tell you where Jones's Achilles heel is. Jones's Achilles heel is he never, ever, 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 ever talks about Israel, the influence of Mossad, Israel's influence in running TSA because they run TSA, they run DHS. Never talks about it. It's always the Chinese, the globalists, the bankers, the communists. Never gets into the other boogeyman in the room, which has been conveniently replaced by radical Muslims. Isn't that convenient? Yeah, we don't have to talk about it. Now radical Muslims get all of our attention. I tell you, some people are really smart. Really smart. They know how to move the chess pieces around. It's Jones's Achilles heel. He can't do it, though. On some level, if he did, let's just say, for instance, he wanted to do it. Let's just say, I want to do it. I want to blow the hatch on this thing. It could be professional suicide. Alex Jones, anti-Semite. He's done. He's already got to face the race card. It could be professional suicide. But yeah, he's a truth teller, right? Or the other possibility is that he's connected into those groups and is a benign gatekeeper at best. Now, if you look into his past, Alex's wife was a quote-unquote member of the tribe, and she had deep ties and connections with the Bronson family, and Alex used to have all of these sponsors that had these products, right? And so you would go to his website, and you'd buy the products from these different sponsors, these different groups. Well, Alex divorced his wife, and now he's making his own products. So he's got all of his vitamins and supplements, which I think is a great idea. By the way, if you're interested in supplements, you should check out my buddy David Limaker's product line, Vigor, Vigor, Vigor.net, I believe it is. That's his Canadian website. He's got the elk antler, and he's got the chagas mushroom tea blend. So if you want to support somebody who is really trying to make a transition from working for the man to working for himself, I go to David's website and buy some of his chaga tea and buy some of his elk antler. Yeah, I think he's got more products coming. We're looking into a big warehouse facility. So Alex has his own version of that. But it's an Achilles heel. Speaking of Achilles heel and speaking out, the very brave and courageous Victor Thorne was found dead. He was a researcher into the Clintons and Hillary. He's gone, dead. Victor Thorne was also a very outspoken critic of a certain country in the Middle East. Just found that out yesterday. It's a dangerous business, boys and girls. Dangerous business. People tell me all the time, oh, Robert, you should be careful. Robert, you're so courageous. I don't know any different. And what I do know is, here we are. If we don't talk and communicate now, we're not going to have much choice moving forward. So this is it. It's now or never. It's the Rubicon. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I don't own a gun. I don't profess to do anything extreme or radical or violent to anybody in any position of power. This is the time. We've got to share. We've got to talk. Well, why don't we do this? Let's use the last few minutes of today's show and get into the power of intention and allow ourselves, just for a few minutes here, be quiet, to close our eyes, to take a breath, and to hold a sense of real peace, real equanimity, real balance, a place where hope and faith intermingle and become the wellspring of our lives to a greater field of consciousness, one that celebrates love and novelty, organic values, continuity, nurturing, protection, care, stability. Let's align ourselves with those values, with that energy. It's the energy of nature. It is not the energy of nature corrupted. As we align ourselves with that energy, we align ourselves with the power of hope and faith. We just walk out into the world. And each one of us is a conduit for something marvelous to happen to and with. That we are the agents of miracles. That we are the practitioners of live, organic magic. That really was the lesson. I don't care what you think of Jesus Christ or Sananda or Emmanuel, whatever you want to call him. The lesson of that life was living, breathing magic 24/7, connected to a greater conduit of consciousness and love. That's it. That's it. That's the model. That's the life. And everybody, man, woman, and child, is capable of that, holding that, being that. Let the power of hope and faith take you forward into the rest of your day, into the rest of the weekend. All right. That's it. We're done. Show over. I'll be back on Sunday nights, talking astrology, getting into the stars a little bit more. Oh, by the way, I'm going to premiere a new show shortly. It's going to be every day, putting it together, 30 minutes every morning. It's coming. Stay tuned. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step into what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You are you. And this is Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.